Suzanne Bonamici or Rob Cornilles? Who will represent Oregon in Congress? Voters in Oregon's 1st congressional district have just 23 days to make a decision. Today, Republican Rob Cornilles answers your questions. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our very first edition of Your Voice, Your Vote. I'm Steve Dunn. And every Sunday, we take your questions and some of our own to Oregon and Southwest Washington news leaders. Our very first guest is Republican Rob Cornilles, who's running for David Wu's vacant seat in Congressional District Number 1. His opponent, Suzanne Bonamici, appears on next week's show. And Rob, thank you very much for joining us. As you well know, Oregon's 1st congressional district leans Democratic. In fact, that district has voters in Clatsop, Columbia, Washington, Yamhill counties, and a small portion of Portland. A Democrat has been representing that district for nearly 4 decades now. So how do you, as a Republican, Rob, convince voters that you're the guy and it's time for Republican in that district now?
Well, one of the things I think people have found in Salem this past year is that balance in the legislature did good things for our state. And on the congressional side, our delegation is imbalanced. We have only one Republican out of 5 or 6 others who are Democrat. And the fact that our state continues to see high unemployment above the national average and problems such as poverty and child hunger and education that isn't where it should be, to me demonstrates that people are ready for a different direction. And right now, as a Republican, when I'm elected at the end of this month, I'll be going into the majority party, which allows me to do things for this district that my opponent would not be able to do as a member of the minority party, not only for this year, but perhaps for the next 3, 5, even more years than that. I have a terrific opportunity with leverage as an independent Republican to do things that this state and this district really needs.
Now, we took our camera to the 1st congressional district to get questions from the people you hope to represent. And the question coming up is from Rob in Hillsborough, and it's one that many baby boomers can identify with. Listen to this.
I'm getting close to eligibility for both Social Security and Medicare. What are you going to do to ensure that those programs are available for both me and other Americans?
What do you think?
It's a great question, and it should be on the top of everyone's mind right now. First of all, I am opposed to the privatization of Social Security and Medicare. It's a program, both of those programs are things that seniors, perhaps such as Rob, have paid into throughout their lives, throughout their careers. It needs to be there for them. One of the things that really encourages me, though, is that recently Senator Ron Wyden, who doesn't share my party affiliation, along with Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, came together, 2 people with very different ideas, and they recognize that partisanship isn't working in Congress today. They have to find ways to meet common ground. And I'm encouraged because they have proposed a concept how we can keep Medicare Advantage, which is the private option, as well as the public option, which so many of our seniors are relying on, and bring them together to make them not only salvageable, but actually long-term and keep them an option for people long-term beyond today's seniors. It discourages me, though, when I see people talk about eliminating the choice that seniors have today. For example, Medicare Advantage, which about 254,000 Oregon seniors have elected to use. Because of the Affordable Care Act, there's great potential that over the next 10 years, $500 billion will be taken out of Medicare Advantage. I can't support that. They've chosen that. They deserve to have it there for them. So I want to work in a bipartisan fashion and see the best ideas on the table, largely coming from the Simpson-Bowles report, which was issued about 13 months ago. Congress and the President, unfortunately, have sat on that. I want to go back and open up those pages and get to work on it.
We're going to, more questions from our viewers. You mentioned health care. You can imagine KATU viewers also had questions about health care. We received an email from Mike, who works 2 part-time jobs for a total of 40 hours a week. Neither provides health care for him. Mike was recently diagnosed with major depression, requires medication and occasional visits to a prescriber. He wants to know this. If elected, what would you do to ensure that people like me don't end up falling through the cracks and needing inpatient psychiatric care and or end up homeless? You probably hear this question a lot on the campaign trail, Rob.
Well, it is a deep concern to a lot of people about just the solvency of health care. How are we going to make sure that it's sustainable? Now, I would have voted against the Affordable Care Act that came about almost 2 years ago because I didn't think it drove down cost. It talked about access, but until we address the cost issue, People like Mike, who are perhaps self-employed or have to pay for their own insurance, or small business owners in this district, such as myself, we continue to see our premiums go up year after year. And as an employer, I've had 60 employees over the years, and every year our premiums continue to go up. I want to find real solutions for driving down costs. One of the things that we can do in Washington, D.C., that we're already doing successfully in Oregon, Steve, is taking advantage of what they call community health centers. I happen to be on the foundational board of a community health center here in Washington County, and it's a way for people of low income or no income to receive health care for a fraction of the cost of what it takes when you're paying for insurance as well as care on top of that. It's a very local solution. We're not the only state that incorporates community health centers, but it's something that, again, both Republicans and Democrats see this as a solution for long-term care, so that the Mikes of the world know that, you know what, even when you're suffering, there's going to be a more affordable way to take care of your needs and your family.
The next question for you, Rob, is about Obamacare from the perspective of a small business owner. Our viewer's husband owns a construction remodeling company in Beaverton. Listen to this.
I'm concerned about the health care plan that Obama administration has put into play. What is your stand on the health care program, and how would small business owners stay in business if they have to pay health care for their employees?
Obamacare, what do you think?
Well, once again, there's a lot of people talking about the mandate that everyone needs to be furnished with health care. It's a law according to the new Affordable Care Act. This is something that the Supreme Court will determine later this spring if that's constitutional. I'm going to leave that to them in the meantime. But for now, what I've been saying, even to the Republicans in the House of Representatives who spent the last year, 2011, trying to repeal something that the Senate would never have repealed because they're Democrat-controlled and the president never would have signed, they should have been spending last year trying to fix the very types of problems that were just discussed. How do we ensure that employers and those who are self-employed or those who don't have employment have the opportunity to receive affordable care? And there's a lot of bipartisan solutions. For example, I think that we need to certainly look at tort reform. We need to make sure that our doctors and nurses are not practicing defensive medicine and driving up costs by ordering more tests and procedures. We need to make sure that small businesses like the one that I own can pool our resources together and get more buying power, such as like the mega corporations can do. We need portability. We need to be able to shop for health care, health insurance across state lines like I do for car insurance. If you do that, the market will create a more competitive environment, and that begins to drive down costs.
I want to play something here. In your new TV ad, you're called a job creator. Your opponent is called a partisan politician. Let's look at that ad right now.
The job creator or the partisan politician? The Oregonian reports Senator Bonamici has one of the most liberal voting records in Salem. She's voted for 60 tax increases, hurting the middle class and small businesses. Incredibly, Bonamici can't recall ever voting against a tax increase or fee hike. And she has no record of job creation. It's time for a job creator.
We have to focus on bipartisan solutions that create real jobs. I'm Rob Cornilles, and I approve this message.
So let's talk specifics now. Here's what a viewer named Spencer would like to know. Most candidates for national office these days claim they want to create jobs. Please detail how you will accomplish that as a new congressman, and specifically how cutting taxes will accomplish this. We've heard from so many people on the streets and in phone calls I've gotten and emails, people saying, I want to know exactly what he's going to do to create jobs. What do you say to that?
Well, the long answer is go to my website, CornillisForCongress.com. I have a very detailed plan on a jobs plan. Unfortunately, my opponent has never released such an idea. There are three things specifically we should do. And by the way, when we talk about job creation, I know a little bit whereof I speak because I have been able over the last 16 years to employ 60 people in this state, starting a business out of my home with my wife 16 years ago. But there are three specific things. The first is tax simplification. We have an overly cumbersome tax code in this country that creates such lack of predictability that, in fact, if I were to ask you, Steve, or any of your viewers, what's your tax rate going to be 12 months from now? What tax bracket you're going to be in 12 months from now? Nobody can answer that because Congress can't make any decisions long term. But if you can give long-term tax constancy by simplifying it, by making it more fair, and by making it more predictable, that produces confidence in people who would be in a position to hire, to invest again in America. The second second thing as it relates to the tax system is I believe we need to eliminate most of the corporate loopholes that only the mega corporations know how to take advantage of, because they're written by lawyers and lobbyists and they're understood only by those who can afford them. There's no reason that, say, General Electric or even Verizon should be actually making money off the tax code as they are today because of loopholes they have figured out, which small businesses in Oregon will never be able to know because we just don't have the resources. It's unfair. Second, we need to lower rates across the board by putting more money into the middle-class pockets of America. If you put more money into people's pockets, they can pay for their mortgage, they can pay for their kids' education, they can start a small business, they can contribute to the community, they can spend into the economy. This creates jobs. Second, the second big thing, in Oregon, specifically the 1st District, we are so dependent on international trade. Nearly 475,000 jobs in Oregon rely on international trade, and I want to be a champion of good trade agreements around the world. I joined President Obama in saying trade creates jobs, especially in the 1st District. Intel, Nike, Columbia Sportswear, they're 100% dependent on international trade, and it's not trading jobs, it's trading products and services. I believe if Oregon companies can compete, we win.
I want to talk about jobs because your sports marketing firm, of course, called GameFace, has 4 full-time employees right now, correct? You've also said you had not more than 20 employees at a time. So you decided to tell voters that you created 60 jobs. How does that all add up? How does that mesh?
Well, over the course of 16 years, I've employed 60 people. Many of my employees came to me with the hopes of working inside our industry, whether it be for the Portland Trail Blazers or the Boston Celtics or the New York Mets. And so they come to me, we employ them for a certain period of time, we train them up, and then, and not in every case, but in many cases, we then advance them into a career or into a job somewhere else in the industry. We've also, in addition to that, helped about 500 people who didn't necessarily want to move to Tualatin, Oregon, but wanted a job in the professional sports world. We train these people, all of whom, practically all of them, were college graduates who couldn't get a job in our industry. We gave them additional skills, and then we introduced them to about 400 teams around the world who trust GameFace and have hired those people as a result.
Isn't that kind of like a fast food joint saying it's created 1,000 jobs over the last decade, when in reality, because of a high turnover rate, they never have more than 30 people working in there at one time?
Well, I've always said I've employed 60 people. I don't know how you get around that fact. And those 60 people, they all had real jobs at GameFace. When we hired them, we hired their family as well. My wife and I took very seriously that responsibility. And I would add that when we began our company out of a spare bedroom in our Tualatin home, we did so out of our savings account. For the first 5 years, we financed our business and the hiring of people out of our own savings. We never looked to other people to fund our venture, to take risk with us. I never felt that was responsible. I think that kind of mentality, that mindset, that background is what we need more of in Congress today, not people who just live off public dollars.
I'm going to get this question. The Democratic Congressional Committee is spending $1 million to get your opponent, Suzanne Bonamici, elected. However, the National Republican Congressional Committee has yet to invest in your candidacy. You can't control that, of course, but what does that say about your chances of winning this?
Well, I think the first question is, what does it say about the Democrats' thoughts of their own candidate? They believe they need to spend, it's actually closer to $1.5 million. They and special interests in Washington, D.C. are pouring into this district to try to discredit me, to mischaracterize things I've said, to mischaracterize my track record of creating jobs, because I don't think they have any confidence in this candidate that they've got. And they're scared to death that Oregonians are finally going to see a job creator as the new direction we need to go. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone who actually is friendly to jobs representing the Portland region once and for all?
In a Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee TV ad, it shows you saying this.
I was the original Tea Party candidate.
That was during the 2010 campaign against David Wu. What did you mean by that?
Thanks for asking. That was taken out of context. The question I was asked at that forum was, what is a Tea Party member? What's a Tea Party candidate? And I can't define it. I don't think anybody really can. In fact, I've beat self-proclaimed Tea Party candidates, not only in this primary that just concluded, but the primary back in 2010. 2 other self-proclaimed Tea Party candidates. But what I said there was, if the Tea Party is a group of individuals who are largely unorganized, but they all have a common desire to hold government more accountable, to see more transparency, to be more active in the process and stop just yelling at the TV or throwing their shoe at it, but instead get involved. Well, back in 2009, when that movement began, though I was largely unaware of the movement, I made that same decision to get involved and to run for office. Thus, I said, if the Tea Party candidate is someone who's decided to move out of the private sector, move out of private life, and try to be elected to do something good for their state, I guess I'm the original Tea Party candidate.
Got a pop quiz for you right now. We're going to do this to all the candidates who come on here. What's the first answer that pops in your head on these questions? What would you rather do, create more jobs or lower the national debt?
Well, they're really one and the same, Steve. I hate to say that. If we lower the national debt, I think it gives more confidence into those people who would invest in our country, and I think as a result, it creates more jobs.
What would you rather do, cut defense or Social Security?
Defense. Defense, by the way, has a lot of inefficiencies that need to be looked at more carefully. Social Security, however, needs to be kept viable for not only today's seniors, but for seniors 20, 30 years down the road.
How would you rather be described here? Someone who sticks to your principles or gets the job done?
Well, hopefully, once again, I can do both at the same time. There's principles which I live by, which have shaped me as a person, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, as a community activist. And there's also practices. I think sometimes you have to adjust your practices and policy, if you will, but always stay true to your principles.
All right, pick one here, just one, beavers or ducks?
My wife's a beaver. I rooted for the Ducks for the Rose Bowl, so congratulations to Ducks.
Good answer. Thank you, Rob, very much.